achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the largest structural issues. We're not looking to hurt China. China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories. They were having a lot of unrest. And they were very happy to be able to do something with us. And the relationship is very, very good.
Okay. Well, that sounds good, at least for 90 days. I don't know what all is going on, but I don't have to. John does. That's what we rely on John for. Joining me now, John Carney, Breitbart News editor, or News Finance and Economics editor. Hey, John, okay, first of all, I'm going to ask you so many stupid questions it's going to make your head spin, but you're used to that by now. What deal did we have? What deal do we have now? What's with the 90 days? You can just have the show for tonight. What's going on?
Yeah, so Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and Jameson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative, went to Switzerland and had what I would call the preliminary discussions. This is really the first time the U.S. and China have gotten together formally since we started putting the tariffs on, since Liberation Day on April 3rd. So what they did is they came together, they, had a day of talks. It wasn't a very prolonged thing. There were some preliminary, talks that went on before that. And they agreed to call it like a 90-day ceasefire, where we would bring down our tariffs to around 10%, plus there's an additional 20% fentanyl tariff that's staying on. China would bring down their tariff to around 10%. They had gone up to 125%. We had gone up to 145%, none of which was the intended tariff level. When Trump announced the tariff levels, it was down near 60% originally on Liberation Day. So they are in talks. And while they're in talks, the tariffs are going to stay lower. There's a reason to be a little skeptical. I know the market is really excited about this, and people are saying, yes, this means like trade war called off. But this is just really it's not even an outline of a deal. It's a plan to make a deal. And so we don't know what's going to happen over the next 90 days or after that. I mean, there's got to be some institutional memory in the Trump administration that last time they made a bunch of deals with China, and China didn't follow through on any of the things that they said they were going to do. And that's one of the reasons why when Trump came back in, he had to go big with tariffs again. So yes, it's a positive that talks began, but we'll have to wait and see, where those things really end up and whether China actually follows through on whatever they agree to.
Okay, so I have a feeling I'm about to ask the $1 million question, which would be a miracle for me, but Trump referenced the larger structural issues, and I can't help but think that's what you seem to be so skeptical of. What larger structural issues are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, a big problem is China's economy basically runs on the idea that they have a huge surplus, that they make a ton more than they consume, that they run trade deficits against the rest of the world and the United States in particular. I don't know how they can easily address that. It's one of the reasons why I've been skeptical that we would ever really come to a deal with China, because I think they'll say a lot of things, but they really demand almost the right to run trade surpluses, meaning other countries get to have trade deficits with China. And it's hard to see how they move away from that and stay at the level of employment that they really have had. And that in itself, like China can't have a 10% unemployment rate. If unemployment climbs in China, it will become so politically destabilizing that the regime is afraid of that. That's one of the reasons they run their country the way they do, to keep people very busy so that they don't notice that their economy is actually propped up by central planning and exits mainly on exports. So I'm not sure they'll be able to address the structural issues, but I'm glad they're trying. I mean, look, the Trump administration has been a lot more positive and optimistic than I am on this stuff. And, maybe I've grown cynical over the years watching China sort of pull the rug out from administration after administration. They did it to the first Trump administration. So I'm a little cynical. They think that they really can get something done. And so I hope that they're right and that I'm wrong on that.
How does this work when we have a new president in 3 years, John? Meaning, can China just kind of ride this out? Or is the political situation, as you mentioned, so sensitive there that they have to get something done too? Essentially, I'm worried about the dictatorship knowing it can ride out the elected president.
Yeah, that's always been a danger. But I actually think in this case, time is on our side. Xi Jinping is not Xi Jinping from 10 years ago. In 2015, he was a much younger man. Time is no longer on Xi Jinping's side. He will eventually not be the supreme leader of China. We're 10 years closer to the day when he's not doing it, being the leader of China, than we were 10 years ago. How long does he have? Nobody knows. He doesn't look like a very healthy man to me. And he may get turned out before he intends to leave. China is not a stable country. There are a lot of things in the background happening. People, you find out about generals who disappear, or various secretaries, undersecretaries who just vanish. Why? Because it's not a stable country. And I think the other thing that China, that's got to be a little bit jarring to China, is I think they thought the first time around, well, once Trump's gone, they'll take those tariffs off. But Biden didn't do that. Biden actually kept the tariffs on. And if you look across the political spectrum, whether it's Donald Trump, all the way to Gavin Newsom actually is saying, yeah, we've got to do something about our trade deficit with China in particular. So looking across the political spectrum in America today, I think they have to be a little more nervous than they were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they could say, yeah, we've got this crazy Trump guy, but he's on his own. The rest of the American establishment doesn't agree with him. Now, I think we've come to a consensus in this country that we're not going to let China continue to run the kind of abusive, mercantilist, predatory trade policies that they have for the last 25 years. And that's on both parties. So I don't think they can be very confident that if we get it, certainly not if we get J.D. Vance in as the next president, but even if we get a Democrat in, I don't think it's going to be, I think a Democrat's going to have to end up running hard on trade. Remember, Kamala Harris tried to run against tariffs. She called it a national sales tax and failed very badly. I think the next group of Democrats to run are actually going to be pretty hawkish on trade issues.
Let's switch gears a little bit here to address the Fed thing. The Fed thing being the fact that Donald Trump called Jerome Powell a fool last week. What's going on with this little tiff?
Well, yeah, so Donald Trump believes that he should be able to call, the head of the Federal Reserve a fool, or his, too late is his nickname for Jay Powell. He really thinks Jay Powell should be cutting rates. We got some very low inflation reports, particularly the inflation report for March was very low. Later this week, we'll get out the April inflation report. If that's also very low, Donald Trump will have a much better argument. And look, the market does agree that the Fed will start cutting sometime this year, that they'll probably cut 3 or 4 times. And Trump's point is that he thinks fuel prices are coming down. We're deregulating. We're going to have more supply side on the economy. And so therefore, we're probably not going to have a lot of inflation. The Fed holding out, maybe holding back the economy. I'll say in defense of Jerome Powell, I think there's a little bit of still reason to be nervous that not all of the Biden inflation has been squeezed out of the economy, that we still may have a residual inflationary impulse in the economy. And if you cut rates too early, you risk reigniting that. So, look, I get it. Trump's a low interest rate guy. He wants them to cut. It's probably been too early. The next meeting or the meeting after that, probably not too early. Then we're probably about ready.
John, as always, brother, I appreciate you very much. Thanks for making us smarter. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.